Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. At the moment, it's just one of us dads here. We're going to have a great conversation today. We're a little early. We're an hour earlier than our normal time. So if you're coming late, a little late to the party, that's okay because we are as well. So we're going to have a great conversation about what's happening in the world today as it relates to the economy, finances, and how it affects our families. Here today on Just Two Dads. Hello. There's my daughter, Jordan. Hello, Joe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. I am Brian Altunian. Usually I say along with my co-host, Shawn Francis, but I don't see Shawn at the moment. So at the moment, it's just one dad. And so he's going to be joining us. Shortly. Hello there. Thank you all for catching us on our special time here on Facebook Live. If you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel, or if you want to see other episodes or past episodes of Just Two Dads, you can go to our YouTube channel. It is We Are Just Two Dads on the YouTube channel. I think we're up to episode number 70 now, somewhere around there, and pretty excited about that. So thank you for catching it. Please subscribe. Please comment. If you're catching us live, comment. We'll put your comments up on the screen just like that. It's my daughter, Joe. And if you're catching us after the fact, that's okay. Leave us comments on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. Share the episodes with family and friends if they are dealing with anybody in their family. In the special needs community. There's my co-host, Shawn. Thank you all for joining us. And if you're catching us on our podcast outlets, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, wherever you hear podcasts, welcome. And hopefully that you will reach out to us. We are justtwodads@gmail.com is a great way to reach out to us. Let us know if there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, or if you had any comment. And then finally, if you're catching us on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, hello, family. Welcome. There is my partner in Thrive, Mr. Shawn Francis, who's dealing with a few technical issues today. As we had an episode early on in actually several episodes, I think, early on, where technology was not our friend, and I feel like we're revisiting that again today. But that's okay. We're going to power through this anyways. We've got a great topic of conversation to talk about. And Shawn, I'm going to ask you this and take a shot here. How are you doing today? Are you there? Dead air. Like, nobody loves dead air more than people who listen to a podcast in their car or watching a podcast where somebody's frozen. Yeah, it's going to be a very difficult conversation today. Shawn, are you there?
Hopefully, I don't know until I speak if you can receive me, if you're hearing me.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But I apologize to everyone in advance. Hopefully the apology won't be needed that much. So with that said, we'll try and be quick and swift as we go through the topic today. I'm glad, thankful, and blessed. I so appreciate this platform and the opportunity that we get to spend time together. It adds value to my day. So with that said, our topic today, if you hadn't mentioned it already, is the manner in which the pandemic and the state of the economy affects special needs families. We've talked about this in variations before, but not exactly where we are right now as it relates to the pandemic. So the last time we talked about this, we were in the midst of actual lockdown, no vaccines, no solutions or anything like that. And I'd like to say that I don't think we're on our way out of the pandemic. The pandemic has simply evolved because now we've got a variant that is in place. We've got a vaccine, comes in two parts, as well as a booster. And what has happened is the supply chain and everything has gone up in price. Student loan forgiveness, which was going to take place or being talked about taking place, is going away in the first quarter of the year. In addition to that, rents are expected to continue to rise, everything at an all-time high. And we want to make it clear today, as you hear what we say about the economy, especially as we talk about gas prices and things like that, there are a lot of people that are going to point a finger at the current president, President Biden, for that. We're not here to engage in that conversation. There's what you call the like higher law, which is usually solution oriented, which is what we want to do. We don't want to get into opinions. Is we are where we are, and we want to encourage people to be able to try and find their way out of that. And like we always say, that anything that affects the general population affects our community, the special needs community, even more so. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today, in addition to potential.
Oh, that was so good. Potential.
I stopped at solutions because I saw that I went blank there for a second.
Potential solutions. Is that what you were starting to say?
I froze right after solutions, right?
You froze right after potential.
Yeah, I stopped at solutions because I saw my screen go blank. So with that said, I want to kind of turn it over to you, Brian. And let's try and clear up the difference between
if you guys could, if you're watching us live, you're going to see Shawn's face. If you're hearing us, you're missing out on the opportunity to actually see Shawn's face as he freezes. Yes, so we'll talk about it, and then Shawn, hopefully you can find some way to clear that up. But let's just talk about a few things, because I've listened on social media. First of all, everybody has an opinion on social media. They like to voice their opinion. They would like to talk about a narrative that fits their perception of the world, and a lot. And what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years is this massive divide when it comes to the political fabric of our country. And so my perspective on this is there are certain things that you can absolutely point to the government and point to the administration and say, you're doing or not doing certain things, right? So that's easy to do. But the reality is, if you understand the world of economics and macroeconomics specifically, you'll understand that this is not, some of the things that impact us on a day-to-day basis have absolutely nothing to do with politics. It's simple economics, which is supply and demand. I remember when I was in my MBA studies, one of the first courses I took, was economics, and they used to always use the guns and butter society. I have no idea why. I think I like to boil it down to weapons and the basics of subsistence, and butter represented everything that you bought. But it's a simple supply and demand situation. So let's talk about gas prices for a moment, okay? So people are complaining that the gas prices are at an all-time high. So let's talk about. I'm just going to say my perspective on this is we are not in a closed society anymore, right? We're not just U.S. centric. We're a global. There's a global economy here, and there's a global impact on prices across the board. So just think about this during the pandemic. As you mentioned, Shawn, we were in lockdown. How much did you drive during lockdown? Would you say the exact amount, the same amount? Would you say half, a quarter, 10%? Maybe, right? So if you drove 10% of what you normally would drive for an extended period of time, it wasn't a week. We were in lockdown for an extended period of time, at least here in Southern California for sure, but across the country, we're in lockdown for a long period of time. By the way, certain countries, Australia has been through several lockdowns for a long period of time. So if the demand has gone down, right, what happens to prices, right? Prices come down to meet the demand, right? Well, some say prices, if the demand is low, prices go up. If demand is high, prices go down. But that's not the way oil works. Oil is opposite, because what happens is the world is dependent on OPEC output for the most part, right? And what happened with OPEC is they saw demand go down. And so what did they do in response? They shut down their production. Massive production reduction. So the amount of oil that was actually being produced for the world went down because the demand went down, right? They're trying to keep their prices up. And as demand's going down, the only way to keep the prices where they're at is to lower the supply, right? Low demand, low supply, you're keeping a balance in prices. That's kind of what happens, right? So their perspective was, we're going to lower the production. We're going to lower the production of oil. And in a way, there was a little bit of a retaliatory component to it, where the entire conversation around climate crisis and global warming and our dependence on fossil fuel, which has been a conversation since the 60s and the 70s, is raging, such that we've got alternative energies, we've got electric vehicles that are on the rise. Elon Musk, now one of the wealthiest people in the world, based on his ownership of Tesla and the propensity for folks to want to buy a Tesla, an electric vehicle. So in a way, OPEC nations were like, well, if you're all going electric, the only way that we can maintain our position of wealth is to keep our production low, right? If the demand's low, we're going to keep our production low so that we can maintain higher prices. So that's kind of what's happened in the world. The fact is, when somebody says, oh, well, blame this on the current administration, the current administration actually did the only thing that was within their power to have an impact on oil prices, which was to release millions of barrels of reserve that the United States has, to put that back into the U.S. circulation. They did the one thing that an administration has control over. Beyond that, they don't have control over OPEC. They can't do anything as it relates to these oil-producing countries. And in fact, we've got somewhat stability in the Middle East at the moment, because there has not been this, big push on oil, on the oil countries. And again, I'm just going to say, prices, what has happened since the lockdowns have loosened? Our demand has gone up. And so as our demand has gone up and the supply has gone down, what happens to prices? They go up too, because our demand has gone up for oil. We are driving a lot more now than we were a year ago. And a year ago, we were driving a hell of a lot less than we were driving the year before. So as our driving habits change, our travel has changed, the supply of fuel it has fallen, again. Have you guys all noticed that when we have a big holiday weekend, like 4th of July weekend or Memorial Day weekend, gas prices always go up prior to that weekend, because they know that demand is going to be high, and gas prices go up because demand is going to go up. So that's an example of one of those things that hits us in the pocketbook. How do we reduce how do we live with higher gas prices? By the way, it impacts our airline travel, and it impacts trucks who deliver goods to our stores and restaurants. It impacts everything, which then brings the rest of our food prices up as well, among other things. There's so many other things to talk about as it relates to that. But I'll stop there for a second while I have you unfrozen and give you a chance to say something or ask me another question around that. But hopefully that gives people understanding. Gas prices here have nothing to do with taxes or administration. And I lost you again. But I'll keep going, since I'm on a rant, and then you can interrupt when you become unfrozen again, Shawn. But another thing that people can, so as we take our kids to and from school, or if we have our kids and they've got a special van service that takes our medically complex kids to and from their school, the prices that they're charging go up because they have to pay for higher fuel prices as well, right? Those are things that impact our families, more than others, and because we're paying for additional services that also rely on these things, and those service providers have to address the fuel prices. Not only that, but one of the big things we've talked about in the economy is the Great Resignation. People not wanting to go back to work. People not wanting to go back to work in a job that they don't like, basically. So that means that companies have had to do things in order to recruit new employees and retain them, and often they're jacking their hourly wages up. So that also has an impact on service providers, especially service providers for our special needs kids who need transportation as part of that conversation. That need for recruiting, but also retaining new employees and having to pay them a higher wage has impacted prices across the board. Increased price in restaurant prices, in grocery store prices. That is just a reflection of what's happening in the labor force. Doesn't even take into account yet the limitations we have in supply chain, where the lack of ability to get, to ease up the supply chain that's happening in the world. You see, there's so many factors involved here. that this is not an an administration or a government thing. There are things the government's doing that is going to impact too, but we'll get to that in a second. But Shawn, got you for a second?
Hopefully so. So I'm going to speak really fast before anything freezes up again. Okay. Several things. One, I just got a notification, and not like I have some hotline. Anybody that's got notifications on their email, I'm not connected to the government, but I just got a prompt saying that economists expected interest rates to go up at a certain period of time, up even sooner. I think I froze it for a second, so I stopped speaking.
One more time.
Hopefully, I'm timing that correctly. But the interest rates are going up sooner than expected, sooner than economists expected. And I didn't even read the headline. I just had it just pop up on my iPad as we're sitting there talking, and it just lends itself again, and everything that you were discussing with regard to the increase and why.
Well, so keep in mind that fiscal policy around interest rates are generally moved as a way to address inflationary or recessionary economic factors. So as our prices continue to go up, inflation has hit its highest in a while. And again, this has nothing to do with the fiscal policy of the administration. Again, I'm going to say the administration and this current government has definitely done some things that have impacted. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But let's just talk about basics. Our fuel prices, our food prices, our supply chain shortages, our need to change, our labor force shortages have all contributed to higher prices. Higher prices is inflation. And there's a way to measure inflation, right? There's a way to measure how these rates have, how these inflationary rates have gone up. The crazy thing about it is, historically, we've actually reported a much lower inflationary rate than really existed. The inflationary rate historically has been around 3%, 2 to 2.5 to 3, maybe to 3.5%. Last month, we recorded about a 6.8% inflation rate, which is incredibly high, and it's reflective of all of the pricing gone up. That's based on what I just talked about as it relates to to the post-pandemic world as we're trying to reestablish. Think about this, if it's difficult to grasp on a larger level how the U.S. economy works, think of your own personal financial situation, right? As if you're laid off, or if you're not making any money, right, your spending goes down, right? And then when you have money, you're being selective in how you spend your money, right? And so your dollar is going to go. You want your dollar to go further, and the pricing has gone up, right? So you just keep that in mind as fiscal policy around establishing interest rates as it relates to inflation. It's reflective of what's happening in the world. So interest rates definitely are going up, but interest rates have been historically low for several years. You folks have to understand, we had a great economy going until the pandemic. And the pandemic has wreaked havoc. Now, some people will say, well, look at the stock market. The stock market has gone up. Stock market is hitting record highs every year.
Good point.
Right? And so they're like, well, that. So how does that? Well, of course they are, because they're all profiting on, these corporations are profiting on this, again, increased spending after not spending for a year, increased profitability because they've kept they've tried to keep their costs down and try to manage their costs. Right. And so they're at record profits. Who's making a lot of money? The banks. Banks are showing record profits right now. Record profits, partially because there are a lot of people putting their money into, people had a surplus of cash. So they're putting their money into banks. Banks were making a lot more money. They're lending out more money. They're trying to spur the economy. The other thing that added to all of this is the stimulus packages that were put together, the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that the stimulus package did. What it intended to do was to try to pump as much into the economy as possible. That's the government doing a policy that is going to have some long-term ramifications, by the way, which we'll talk about. Again, like keep alluding, we're going to talk about it here in a second, but that is one of the things. But, their goal was to try to put money in the pocket of the people who were hurting because they were laid off or shut down during the pandemic. And some people say, well, they're never going to go back to work because they're getting all this free money from the government. Okay, nothing is free from the government. Everybody should know that, right? There's no such thing as free.
Everybody
money.
pays for it.
We all pay for it. At some point in time, we all pay for it, right? So anyways, the stock market has gone up for a whole number of factors, partially because, and if you look at it, during the pandemic, the companies that grew in stock valuation and market capitalization were the companies that changed when, to address the pandemic. So Peloton, Netflix, Apple, Amazon. People were not going to the store shopping; they're buying on Amazon. Excuse me. And so those companies had meteoric rises during the time of the pandemic because people's buying habits changed. Now that the pandemic has, gone through its maturation a bit, and people are still doing it, some of those companies have maintained these elevated things because we've changed the way we do business. I would say, the companies that provide TV in the old traditional way are seeing that folks are not buying TV, consuming TV in the same way. They're doing it via streaming services. And look at all the streaming services. They have now, you have to buy, Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and ESPN Plus, and you have to buy individual streaming services. You're paying as much now collectively for all of the individual streaming services to get your programming as you were for cable. That has created a shift in where money goes. And so again, I'll only briefly address what you were talking about, which is interest rates going up. But interest rates go up as a fiscal response to inflationary activity and try to keep the inflation from being overblown. So I got you unfrozen for a second, so I'm going to stop talking for a second.
Right.
Another question. Got another question.
Right. Well, the one thing I'm going to say, which we could kind of sort of transition to as we work our way through these technical issues, is one thing I realize is we're going to come back and have this conversation again, maybe even in a different form, because I'm feeling like we've been missing something, especially as you said, the maturation continues with the pandemic.
Lost you again, Shawn. I think the point that Shawn is eventually getting to here is that all of this impacts all of our families, and it impacts our families' abilities to maintain some sense of normalcy or some semblance of normalcy with our children, again, who have special needs issues, cognitive issues, and medically complex issues, because we've had to address, when our kids were doing school via Zoom, difficult as that was for the mainstream student population, this was even harder for our children who are on the autism spectrum or have other cognitive issues or behavioral issues or other medically complex issues to be able to sit in front of a computer screen for an extended period of time and learn, with the distraction of all of these things on the screen. And, we've had to make some adjustments in all of that. In some cases, the aids that were provided by the school system now have to be either supplemented or paid for entirely by families. That had a huge impact on families' economic situation. Again, we've talked about transportation and getting our children to certain therapies or getting them to doctor's visits or wherever they need to go. That's impacted especially if we had to use a transportation service. Challenges of, we'll talk a little bit about the masks, challenges for some of our sensory sensitive children who, having to wear a mask in public or be removed or disallowed, right? Not allowed in a location. That's had an impact on our families. So the pandemic has had a significant impact across the board, financially, socially, just in the way that we do things. And Shawn and I, for those that have followed us for a long time, and for those of you who know us, Shawn and I do work in the financial services industry, and we we are taking, and I'm just going to launch into this, Shawn. We're taking a very concerted effort now to do what we've done here on this podcast and make it a much broader reach, because we want all of our families, we want all of the families that we interact with to find financial solutions that work for them for the short term, midterm, and long term, right? We always say, take care of your families, find a way to, to earn more money, keep that money, legally reduce the amount of taxes that you pay the government, have growth, have protection from a possible, downside in the market. Don't have your investments just in the stock market. And then also, protection for the time that we as parents pass on, and, putting things like a trust in place for our children who need additional protection. So that's the work that we do professionally. Shawn and I have decided to take that work, and although we've mentioned it and we've had people on our podcast as guests before who impact the special needs community in this area of finance and protection. We've had Glenn Wagstaff, who does estate planning and does, special needs trusts. We've had a number of other financial professionals that do this, but we're going to say this now. We're going to announce this now. The state of the economy has created so much upheaval for so many families that we want to make sure that our special needs community understands that we are a resource that can help people improve their financial lives. So our Just Two Dads, we are forming our Just Two Dads LLC as a formal company, where we're going to be doing a lot of things under that banner. Our Someday is Today special needs financial events are going to increase significantly in the year 2022. So we're going to be doing a number of events under our Someday is Today brand. And we're going to have opportunity for people to get hands-on learning on how to take advantage of the things that impact their families. I cannot control what the government does. I cannot personally, obviously I can vote, but I can't control how much money is going out to families. There's another $300 child tax credit due today or tomorrow. So just look at your bank for a direct deposit. Your $300. It's October, November, December are 3 of the 6 that they've issued. Right? I can't control what they do. I know that the impact eventually is going to be the only way to pay for all of the money that's been put into the system over the last 25, 26 months is the only way to make up for it is to raise taxes. That's not a current administration issue. That is a math issue. This has been coming for a long time. This has been coming since the 80s, and the idea that baby boomers were retiring at a record pace, 70,000 a day. I'm sorry, 11,000 a day, turning 71. And the impact that was going to have on our economy going back to the 1980s and Ronald Reagan's administration. The idea that taxes were eventually going to go up to pay for these entitlement programs across the board. But as our aging population changes, it's gonna have a huge impact. So if we know the taxes are going up in the future, what can you do today to make sure that you can minimize your tax exposure for today and for the long haul? Those are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about more regularly under our Just Two Dads banner. Our podcast is here to provide opportunity, a platform for folks who address the special needs community on a whole variety of subjects. It's not just going to be finance, but I just wanted people to know Shawn and I are going to be writing a book. We're going to be speaking about this out in the world beyond our podcast as well. We have a lot of things that we have in the works for 2022. We're very, very, very excited about. We're launching a new website. We're going to be talking about these things because we want, but more importantly, we're looking for, thank you, Mark. We're looking for folks who want to have an impact in this community, who want to participate, who don't want necessarily the typical 9-to-5 job, but are looking for ways to make additional income for their families, servicing the community that we love, that we're members of, that we support, and that we want to not just survive, but thrive. We want families to thrive during these times. This is not, some folks looked at the pandemic as Thank you, Riggs. Great to see you, buddy. Some folks look at this as, how do we just get through the pandemic? That's not what this is about. This is about, how do we thrive during the pandemic? And by the way, as you've seen, there's a huge separation between the wealthy 1% of folks in the US population, a huge separation between those folks and everybody else. Billionaires made billions during the pandemic. Our perspective is, everybody has an opportunity to take a bite of the American pie and the American economic pie. And that's the stuff that we are going to be focused on in 2022. We believe that there are tools and there's financial education that is not being delivered to the majority of folks, and definitely not to our special needs community. And so for those who are listening, if you know people who are interested in participating, reach out to us, let us know. I'll say this one thing, Shawn, and then I'll stop. And hopefully we've got you live here. But when people say, what do you do? What is it that you do? I answer this way very simply. I'd say, on one hand, right, this is a simple answer to the question. On one hand, we help individuals, families, and small businesses with their insurance and their investment needs, so they can see long-term growth in their wealth and build family legacy wealth. On the other hand, I recruit, train, and mentor people who want to start a business in this industry, so that they can do the same thing that we do. So you could say we're their brokers. And in essence, that really is what we do. We do those two things. So if that is of interest to folks, we're going to be blatant in asking you, if you want to participate with us, or if you know somebody who may want to participate with us, our bottom line goal is the same. We want to help impact our families in the special needs community, so that they're not just surviving, but they're thriving during the best and the worst of economic times. Shawn, throwing to you. We don't have time to mess around, Shawn.
We must be on to something, because I'm sitting here like irritated with my internet connection today, and at the same time, this just hit me. I'm trying to think, all right, maybe this is a blessing and a sign and a challenge, because of everything you just said in terms of what we're getting ready to do and try and do. And let's just be real transparent. Special needs community is one that is guarded. The role of a parent is that of a protector. When your child is diagnosed with special needs, the protector quotient goes up tenfold, right? If not more. And so it's natural to be skeptical about, information that somebody may be giving. And, there's been some time spent, making sure that we don't overstep boundaries. We want to add value and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, when it comes to financial,
and he's gone. I think the point is, it's so funny. Some people are saying, this is a little difficult to watch, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. In the very first episode we ever did of Just Two Dads, we had this issue with one of our guests, and I literally had to talk to her on the phone, and so that people could hear, which we realized was so stupid. We should have just delayed the the broadcast. Well, now you get me as and my whole face. So again, Shawn was kind of alluding to the fact that we take this protector role seriously, but as a protector, it's one thing to protect your family while you're here. How do you make sure that protections are in place for when you're not here? That's really the bottom line. How do you make sure that the things that you've set out to accomplish for your family carry on after you're gone? And by the way, we talk about this when it comes to small businesses too. If you're running a business, if you own a small business, or you own any size business, and you're the majority owner, if you haven't thought about your succession plan, what happens beyond your role here, then you're shortchanging the folks that are left behind if something happens to you, and B, you're missing out on an opportunity to actually plan for the future and plan for the idea that your company and your product and your vision will live on beyond you. So those are some of the things that we talk about, making sure that there's a proper succession plan in place for your business, but also for your family, for you as an individual, for you as a couple, for you with your children. Make sure that there's something in place to protect. We're seeing things that have never been seen before. The tornado that just happened in Kentucky in the Midwest, where over 75 people lost their lives. In fact, some of them lost their lives in that candle factory. If you've been reading the headlines, they lost their lives in a candle factory. And they were told, if you leave early to try to get home to protect your family, and you leave work early, chances are you're going to get fired. Could you imagine working in that kind of a condition where you're put in danger? And if you want to try to avoid danger, you put your livelihood at risk, because your job may be at risk if you leave early to protect your family during a tornado. And clearly an underestimated tornado, because I don't think anybody anticipated that was going to come as it did. If you've seen any of the videos live, well, people took it at night. That's frightening. Apparently at night, I live in California, I have earthquakes. We can't see earthquakes coming, but you can't see night tornadoes coming either. And so for those folks who lost loved ones in that sudden, bizarre, rare tornado that occurred in December, that is the kind of thing that we're talking about. Make sure that you've got something in place. Make sure that you've got your family protected. Make sure that you're there. This is not to protect you for the times that you know about. It's for the things that are unknown, those illnesses, the sudden passings. I always say that when somebody passes away, it's still a shock, even if it's expected. The moment of passing is such a, and not to get spiritual, and definitely not to get overly religious, but when somebody passes away, that moment of crossing over is really so powerful, that it impacts everybody. That moment. I remember when my grandfather was ill, and I was not in the hospital when he passed. I was actually at his house in his garage, and I had this weird sensation come over me. And I found out later that afternoon that was the moment that he had passed away. So the moment that people pass away, Shawn's back. The moment that people pass away is so significant, not just for obviously the person passing, but for everybody in that family, that it's felt on a widespread basis. So when somebody says, "Oh, it was a surprise," or someone says it wasn't a surprise, they've been sick for a long time, that moment is still a shock to the body and the system when it happens. So protecting your families when the unknown or the unforeseen shows, that's a bit what we're talking about. Shawn, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're talking about protection of your family while you're here and after you pass on, and making sure you've got something in place to protect them. And yes, we're talking about things like life insurance, and we're talking about things like where your investments are, and putting a trust in place so that your assets are protected. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about, and we'll continue to be talking about. And the concept, and conceptually overall, so that when things like gas prices or even the price of fast food, it's incredible how much fast food has gone up in price, that you're not like, oh my God, I'm not prepared, or that's a big, you've got things in place, an emergency fund, you've got certain things in place that protect you. So you're not worried about who's in the White House or what's happening in the White House. You're only worried about what's happening in your house, as Shawn says a lot. Anyways, Shawn, something else you'd like
One
to
of the things I was just going to say, as you were talking about, depending on what situation a person is in, you were talking about, your investments, your plans, and things of that sort. For some people, I know there's some people that are listening to us, whether you're catching us live or listening after the fact, you're thinking, investments? I don't have any money to invest. I'm worried about today, hoping that tomorrow comes, or if and when I see it, that I'm in a position to enjoy that. But I would dare say that there's, as we think of the cost of investing, it's worthwhile to think about or learn about the cost of not investing too. That's something else that goes a long way. And because those things have a great need, the work that we do, especially in the age of Zoom with the pandemic, happens to be not just pandemic or recession proof. It's financial services as one industry for which there has been an even greater need in the pandemic. And so since what we're trying to do is add value, the ultimate goal here is not to, let's see how many people want to come work with us and either learn to do what we do, or get trained to do that, or start a business and build a book of business that can leave to their family, whatever. Those are all great things. But whether it's that or something else, identify an industry, identify a problem for which there is a great need, and be part of that solution, whether it's working with us or somebody else, because the pandemic is a challenge, but challenges are also opportunities. And just like companies whose goods and services we need have, been forced to raise their prices, and we have no choice in most cases but to pay those prices, the same is true of us. Just like they've pivoted, we can pivot too. And whether it's, again, the work that we do in financial services or something else, there's other things that are out there. It just happens to be what we do and what we're passionate about. But there are a lot of things out there. We can spend a whole show on something like that, and we will in the future with regard to what else is out there that somebody can do that all together.
But just to clarify, our pivot does not include raising prices, right? So because you a little bit tied those two together,
right.
They're not. Our pivot,
right,
as others have had to make adjustments. Most companies in the financial services industry have, they're struggled with the remote work, the work from home concept, and most, don't know how to actually deal with that. The numbers of folks that are employed by those industries have gone down. What Shawn's saying, as a pivot for us, we've just taken on the technology advancements and given that and use that as the opportunity to reach more people. Where we used to have bricks and mortar offices as well, we're not using Zoom as much back before the pandemic. The pandemic created an opportunity for us to reach more people now because we can talk to them electronically. And while we use our platform to deal with those issues that that our special needs families face, we know that finances plays a big role in all of that. And our commitment as a firm is that no family is left behind. Our commitment as colleagues and partners here in this business is that no special needs family gets left behind. We want to make sure that our special needs families, that our medically complex families, that are families that are dealing with challenges, make sure that they've got resources available to them that they know about, that they can get educated about. And yes, I will do that. Know what's available to them so that they can take advantage of all the things that are available to that, we always say that our wealthy 1% know about. We want everybody to know about. That's the work that we do. And by the way, we believe that what our firm is all about is making sure that people know how to earn money, keep it, grow it, protect it, eliminate the amount of taxes legally, eliminate the amount of taxes that you pay, set up structures and financial vehicles that protect you and your family for legacy, for multiple generations that are ongoing. Those are the kinds of things that we do. We'll get into specifics. We're going to do one of our Someday is Today event. Feel free to reach out to us at, we are just two dads at gmail.com. If you have something specific that you'd like to talk about, we talk about, again, special needs trusts, life insurance, long-term care, debt reduction. Shawn mentioned early on that there was supposed to be a reduction in student loans. I just want to address that for one quick second. It's interesting that it was going to be a $50 million across the board, $50 million reduction in student loan obligations. That's what the government had put in place. And for you to understand that $50 million sounds like a lot. I'm sorry. It was $50 billion. It was a massive amount. It seemed like a lot. It represented 0.06% of the total amount outstanding in student loans. That continues to compound daily and continues to grow. So the amount of money, whether it's millions or billions, it almost doesn't matter. It can't touch it. We're at $1.7 trillion in student loan obligations that compounds on a daily basis, and that you can't outrun. You can't go to bankruptcy and get out from under your student loan debt. Luckily, we have solutions that can help you qualify for a student loan forgiveness program and other similar kinds of programs that help you absolutely get that under control. Some people look at their student loans and think, oh my God, I'm paying another house payment in my student loans. We understand that. We have solutions for that too. So there are debt reductions, debt servicing companies that we work with. There are a number of companies that we work with that provide tremendous value so that all of our families have an opportunity to win financially. Shawn, I got you live. Every time I say that, I think I'm the jinx, because every time I say that, then you freeze. You know why, Shawn? We just, it's because we decided to go an hour early. That's
all
why.
I heard was every time I say that, you freeze.
Yeah, that was it. Pretty much it. Yeah, you're freezing because
That's
we went
exactly
an hour
right.
early. Yeah.
That's exactly why. That's exactly why.
Do you? Well, I got you.
Oh boy.
Say something.
Hold still. Hold still. No. Just
don't.
that, you know. No, just that, you know, I really hope that we hear from people when they're hearing this, because there's people that are out there that are really, you know, that are desperate and scared, and in some cases just maybe not desperate and scared, but at least want to know, you know, where do they turn, what are their options, and what do they do. And the way that one of the many thoughts that we happen to share is that, you know, one, aside from the information or solutions that we have, you know, access to, we know people that have access to things that we may not, because we're solution oriented people. Our business just happens to serve in that regard. So do reach out to us, you know, to let us know what your concerns are, especially regarding some of the topics that have been touched today.
Right. There is still more things that are going to come out as it relates to our economy. Keep in mind, like the pandemic, like mask mandates, like vaccination mandates, we're not doing this on an island. This is the entire world is dealing with this. The entire world is dealing with a changing economy. The entire world is dealing with the pandemic. We crossed over in the United States, just crossed over 800,000 deaths, which is more than any other country. We're over 2 million deaths in the world. Mandates around vaccinations is not a U.S. thing, and it's not a political thing, even though some have politicized it. Mask mandates are not a political thing, even though people have politicized it. The impact of our economy, rising prices, gas prices going up. By the way, gas prices going up just reinforce the need to look at alternative energies and alternative fuels. It just does, so that we're not beholden to others. We're not beholden to other countries who want to control our economy by this. So remember that our goal is to make sure that no matter what happens in the economy, first of all, it's a bigger global effort. So that's too much for us to try to address right away. Easy to blame, easy to politicize, too big to address. I promise you, when you look at there are economists that are on the goal, on the task here. Let them do their job. You and we want to focus on your families and our families and those that are impacted by these changes, so that their families can not just survive, but thrive. And with that, you guys, we hope that you'll join us in our Some Day is Today events. We're going to post them. We will be announcing our new website and our launch. We're going to continue to push our effort here. We're forming our Just Two Dads corporation, or LLC, right now to kick off 2022. And we're very excited about what the future looks like for us personally, for the people that we interact with, for our clients, for our colleagues, for our team members, for our families. We hope that you will be excited about it too. Hope that you consider, talking to us further if we can help you or your family. We want to do that as soon as possible. And if you know of other people that we should be helping, we want to know that as well. Some people are embarrassed to talk about their finances. I promise you, A, we've seen it all. B, we've been through it ourselves. And finally, everybody starts someplace. You don't have to have a ton of money to begin saving money and investing money. You just have to be willing to start. So on that, I want to say, as I sign off every show, I say, empathy and love is really the key here. You don't know people's situation. We never judge folks when it comes to their finances, because we understand and we empathize, and we want people to know that the more empathy that we can bring to another, understanding that their situation is something that we do not know much about. Empathy is a way to look at that, and always through the lenses of love. And no matter what's happening, if you see the world through the lens of love, this world will be a better place. Shawn, I'm hoping that you're going to be okay enough to sign us off and close us out a little early today, but can you do it?
I'm going to do it as quickly as humanly possible. Thank everyone for tuning in, for everywhere. I want to thank the ladies in the women in my life, without whom I would not be able to be who I attempt to try to be. And that is my mom, Jan, and my wife, Laura. I would like to make sure that, we're all reminded that everybody somewhere needs to know that that they matter, that they've seen, that they're heard, and that they loved. And thank you for tuning in. And if you're watching this, we love you.
Thank you for catching us on our Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, podcast outlets. Thank you for seeing us live here on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. We are Just Two Dads. And for all of our folks down the U.S. Virgin Islands, WSTX Radio, we love you all. And thank you again. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Yes.
And a shout out, prayer, and love to our producer, Shawn Hall.
Absolutely. Shawn Hall, we love you and miss you. And prayers to you and your family during this difficult time. We love you. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and thanks for the comments. Catch you on another episode soon.